We'd also like to offer a special thank you to our sponsor, Interior Tech, who is sponsoring this DDS series of Design Award winners. And we appreciate their support as always. If you have an opportunity to thank any of our representatives from Interior Tech as they come through your offices, please do. And with that, I am going to turn our presentation this evening over to Chris Roberts and Alec Holzer about their projects, the 2030 winners from Opsis. Please take it away.
Get myself turned on here. Thank you for the introduction. I'll go ahead and put this screen up and running. Share screen. Worked a minute ago. There we go. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and start off today. We're going to be talking about the University of Idaho's ICCU Arena as a part of this digital design series. And so thank you to the AIA for inviting us to share the project today. The Arena was a project that's near and dear to everyone's heart here at Opsis, but particularly mine. It was kind of a labor of love over the last 4 years before it opened up in September of 2021. And kind of going back to the genesis of the project, the University of Idaho is located in Moscow, Idaho, and it's in a region of the world known as the Palouse, which was are some the rolling farm hills that you see outside. Let me get this forward. It's not forwarding here. Try this. There we go. The rolling grass hills that you see down below, or wheat fields, if you will, that is a Palouse, and they were formed by the Great Missoula floods about 15 million years ago, or 15,000 years ago, and it's really a strong emblem of the region and representation of the peoples that live there, and it's a really strong entity to draw inspiration from, and so I think early on in the project we had been working with the university, and there were kind of two givens. One is we knew where it was as far as a place, and the other being that it was going to be a mass timber focused arena, and so our focus was kind of intertwining the two to help from a form generation standpoint, but also give the place a real meaning and purpose that resonated with the college, the students, and the alumni. And so utilizing sort of the natural beauty of the landscape and the form work, we kind of manipulated that and integrated that with the idea of a mass timber design, pretty much a hybrid mass timber design, and we'll kind of get into the specifics of that. And in this image here, you're kind of seeing just a sectional view, a sectional perspective that's taken through, that's just kind of looking at the primary structural members, and then some early on conceptualization, just with the simple moves and grace of the curving forms of the Palouse and how that might integrate into, say, a roof form that would make its way into the project. And of interest here, you'll notice the 12 rows of the king post trusses were a really prominent fixture, and then the portal truss that we'll do a talk about there, that's kind of, I like to think it looks like pie, if you will, and that carries about 400,000 pounds of load from the roof structure and distributes it amongst the bowl. This is an east-west section, again, kind of looking how we wanted to have various expressions of the mass timber wood structure. Conceptually, we kind of conceptualized a kind of simple angular box, if you will, for the program elements like the courts, locker rooms, offices, etc. And the idea of this sort of roof structure kind of draping over and covering the various programs, and wanted to have a kind of expressive greeting out to the west, which is on the right-hand side of the screen here, and that kind of looks out to the Palouse, kind of where the experience, we like to say, comes full circle. And then on the campus facing side on the left here, the idea of maybe looking at a different expression, one that was kind of more grounded. And again, this is kind of playing with the early sketch that you see here of just ways to sort of integrate it, anchor it into the landscape, but at the same time express itself outwardly as a new kind of gateway to the east side of campus, which is part of the athletics precinct. Here's a kind of before and after shot. So the early kind of just looking at a structural wood model of how the structure might work together in harmony to sort of address these various site forces. And then the contextual image you're seeing here is the north side of the arena, the large beer can in the background there. That's the Kibbe Dome, which is a 16,000 seat their football stadium, and we're just directly adjacent to it. And this was on a kind of a greenfield site, just to the north of the Kibbe Dome. And so a couple main site issues that we were dealing with here was kind of just off to the right in this image is a massive parking lot. So they've got a lot of student parking and event parking to the west. And our location kind of created a new campus gateway, both from vehicularly, as you can see the road in front, but more importantly, the pedestrian student access. It's a primary circulation route to the heart of campus. And so our central or our entry plaza kind of swings around to the north side of the building. As you walk past, you get to see views into the facility. It's very open. We took a different approach in kind of breaking out of the typical steel and concrete boxes that kind of form the general framework of this building typology, and tried to really, create something that was warm, inviting. And so the use of mass timber, open glass, again, all this is kind of facing north. So we're really able to help control the daylight there, but also wanted to always have the action on display, just contextually as a little site plan perspective, kind of showing its location and proximity to the Kibbe Dome. And then you see the campus to the upper left-hand corner there, and the parking lot that's to the west. And so you can get a sense of just how it sits on campus. And it really, the stadium drive, which runs by the edge, it becomes really, it's sort of the gateway for all the movement as you get more towards campus. We looked at, it's basically a 2-level building with one level below. So for a total of 3 levels. We put all the program locker room spaces, storage spaces, wet mechanical down on this lower level. And you're also the funny little squiggle off to the left. That's our loading dock area as you come in to get direct access onto the floor. By sinking the footprint down, basically 14 feet below grade, it allowed us to really take advantage of our main level or concourse level circulation. But this begins to just kind of show some of the angularity, or just the simple program boxes that I was talking about earlier, that form the framework of the program, but then get more expressive as you move up through the building. And so at the concourse level, you're at grade, and what this did, it was allowed us to really open up the space. We really wanted to always be able to experience the mass timber while you're in the arena, and really never leave the space. So there's no vomitory or traditional vomitory that you would walk through into the space in a separate concourse and performance area. It's all one space and all open to the structure above. So wherever you are at any time as you're making your way down to your seat, up from the seat, going to the concessions, going to the restroom, you're always kind of in the middle of the activity and always a part of that environment. And so we've got what we call the concessions block, which is on the left-hand side here, as mostly concessions and restroom areas that open directly out onto the concourse. And then the larger office space is all their basketball operations. And we also have a lot of the residual restroom spaces, men's and women's, built into that as well. And your vertical circulation is kind of at the 2 west corners that take you down and up into either down to the locker room area or up to the club room area. And this just kind of diagrams the flow of traffic. The lower entry blue arrow there, that's the primary entry for everyone that is kind of traveling by automobile to a game as they come into the arena, and then the primary student access from the east side or the upper corner there, all kind of congregate then on the central north side concourse, and then you can see this sort of free roaming range of being able to circumnavigate through those primary entrances. Then on the upper level, we've got an alumni room club room. The University of Idaho's alumni didn't have a home, and so they participated in the project. And so on a regular daily 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, it's home to their alumni. It gives them a place to congregate, gather, meet, and get information about the university. And then on game day or game evening, they switch it over to become the club room, and you can kind of see there's a row of seating, loge seating that's out to the front of that. Kind of a great view, overlooks the courts, provides another price point for revenue generation. And one of the nice features about this upper level, it has a large, what they call the Vandal Terrace, or an outdoor deck that kind of overlooks the primary entry into the arena, but also has views out to the Palouse beyond. And then on the bar that's over on the upper right-hand side, that's where kind of all of our mechanical equipment was located. So we kind of located the mechanical on this level, and then we feed that into the arena. And then the roof just drapes over these program areas, and it expands or contracts volumetrically depending upon what the program area requirements are below. So that's why we've got the higher level over the central performance court to give us the clearances we need, but then it lowers itself as it gets over the concourse level to provide a more intimate experience for people that are in the arena. We worked really closely on this project with StructureCraft out of Abbotsford, British Columbia. They came on in schematic design, and for those anyone online that's worked on mass timber projects, it's your partners are a key component in being able to do this type of work, and particularly when you're trying to stretch the limits and capabilities of what mass timber and wood design can do. Here we really focused on going long span. It's definitely not a project where we're looking at going up and doing office space, but so it was a different kind of twist on the mass timber formula. And StructureCraft came in. We actually brought them in as a design build partner in schematic design, and what that helped do was give us cost certainty, which was really difficult with the multiple subs as we start looking at the hybrid structure where you've got multiple components. Their excellence as far as design excellence and input to be able to kind of see our vision through, and then just also being able to sort of coordinate with other mechanical, electrical systems within their main systems. So you're seeing their shop in the upper corner there when one of the portal truss was under construction, and then you're seeing the sort of keystone lift of the central part of the portal going in, and if you could kind of squint and look really carefully, you can see the gray between the double glue lambs there. That's where we ran, became our utility or mechanical highway, where we ran everything because we wanted to conceal all the mechanical work to the greatest degree possible to not take away from the wood structure. This is a view from the east looking west. You can see the rolling hills of the Palouse. It's the dry season there, or winter's coming out of winter in this picture, but the idea of the swooping roof plane. Here's the practice gym is what you see clad in the metal roof / wall panels. Again, utilizing some natural daylight to bring in to that space as well. Also looked at the fissure between the two roof planes as another opportunity to maximize natural light into the space and minimize the need for lights to be on at times when they don't need to be. It was kind of part of our sort of sustainable energy saving measures that we were looking at in the project. Again, kind of going against the typical way that these projects are approached. And then you can also see the loading dock. And so this kind of gives you a sense of the various levels and how they're interconnected with campus. As a view from the inside, so it was almost like this. Yeah, we were thinking like, what's the experience like? If you were out in the Palouse, if you were inside the rolling hills, what would that experience be like? And we tried to kind of say, imaginary, what that could experience be, this warm little cavern underneath, and so really just worked again to sort of maintain the continuity of the wood structure throughout. You can see the sort of utility highways that I was speaking of, where we're running here in this case in the east-west direction, duct socks between our double glue laminated top cord. I got a large boxcar scoreboard, 15,000-pound scoreboard, which is another challenge with the mass timber structure at center court. And it's really looked at, the layout of the bowl, making it very intimate. And then here we're on the upper, this is basically the worst seat in the house, which is still a pretty good seat, but you get a sense of the overall space, the concourse, concessions, basketball operations on the lower level below, and then views out to the surrounding campus. This is the basketball practice court, which is just directly adjacent to the performance court. We did use the rolling bleachers to allow them to sort of double dip on space. And this was a real, both a cost saving measure, but also just provided them a lot of flexibility in how they can utilize the space. And really nice, again, natural daylight coming in, tried to really turn on its head what a practice gym is typically like, which is more of a pre-manufactured steel structure, and really again use that expressive nature of the wood to kind of come around and embrace you on the east side of the court. These are looking at the main, just views off of the main entry plaza. We're facing directly west, and so we were able to use the cedar, donated cedar siding to create the sunscreen that you see here. So that's the office area, sunscreen below, and then becomes the guardrail system up above. So if you look to the right, the gentleman's looking out into the Palouse, and that guardrail system is what's sitting on top of that wood slatted wall. And then just again, the ability to be always in touch and around the wood was like always a primary driving factor in the design. Is kind of looking at the main entry, west entry, got a small ticket office off to the right there, or the left there. You're seeing the vertical windows at the window, or at the stairwell. And then we also utilizing the wood siding that had been donated, kind of we're able to kind of build that into their I logo at the entry. And also the coloring was really kind of looking, inspired by a lot of the old, for lack of better words, dilapidated farmhouses that have been around, for a century or more, and kind of tying into that concept, the agrarian architecture of the region. And then so you can see in the concourse, just kind of looking out the various components. This is kind of the corner of the concourse. You get a sense of the overall view of what that experience is, where I was talking about you're always kind of in the space and always able to appreciate or participate in the wood structure. Interesting little tidbit here. You'll notice the steel struts, or those gray struts that are ascending upward from the portal truss. It's one of the few areas we had to use intumescent fireproofing. Ironically, in our wood structure, and probably some of you know this quite well, is that the steel is the weak point that from a fire protection standpoint. And so while all the mass timber components provide you the fire protection kind of inherently within their sizes, we did have to protect some of the lower steel with paint, and we did go through an alternate means and methods with the state to not have to coat some of the more finite elements, like the king post trusses that are within 25 feet of the floor surface. We worked with Jensen Hughes and did some fire modeling to demonstrate the the potential heat loads there and determined that they were not adequate to create any kind of yield in that structure. You can also see the little eyebrow off in the foreground here, or which are the low seating area. This is the construction as structure craft was, these massive pieces of timber that were really just slid in nicely. Amazing craftsmanship on their part, between what they fabricated, in British Columbia, and then what was installed on site in Moscow, Idaho. Was really a great experience. And then we try to use wood elsewhere in the project wherever we could. So the corners provided or presented a kind of a challenge from a traditional seating sense. So we were able to utilize our forest industry partners to help fabricate and manufacture these curving glulam benches. We also then utilize that same methodology for the countertops at the bar height seating that runs around the perimeter corners and on the straight areas of the concourse. And you also notice, to get the sight lines working with the expanded bleacher seating up above, we raised that about 4 feet off of the concourse level, so you could always see the game and not be blocked by the people that are walking in front, which ended up being quite a challenge for the seating manufacturer. As one of the tallest bleachers that they've ever tallest portable bleachers that they've ever had installed. It's kind of just looking at cross court there, again, looking at the natural daylight, both the cow wall and the clear views out to the surrounding context, to campus and trees. Just looking at my time. Yep. And this is up in the low seating area, in the upper left-hand corner office area. We would call the closing room, was a place for coaches and players and recruits to meet. It's got a direct connection to the office, but also views out directly to the court, which is a kind of a new feature. And we also were able to repurpose their old portable court. That's what you see as the floor in there. So we took center court, and that became the central entry of the basketball operations. It's another view looking back the other direction, where you can kind of see the curving wood structure embracing the stands, or the portable bleachers, as well as the practice court, and just get a sense of the overall space, and pretty good view of just how we tried to minimize the visual clutter. There's always going to be some with like the speaker clusters and the need for very precisely located performance lighting on that side, but try to tie it all together. And then this side is, I think, towards the end here, just again looking at the various materials, trying to be very simple and purposeful in their expression. The dark charcoal stained wood siding, which we did a variegated patterning on that, and then that sort of more rougher, darker texture juxtaposed to the lighter, clean, just clear sealed glulam beams, and then the expression of just the glue, or the standing seam metal panel there. So this would be how a student or someone coming from campus would approach the building. And then also there's one last just caveat or note on the practice gym, is the idea of this kind of idea of just the revealing of the structure, even when we were covering it, being able to always have some kind of contextual relationship to it. And so that, I think, finishes my presentation. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay, I'm Alec Holzer from Opsis Architecture, and I'm going to share a screen here, which hopefully is going to work. Did that work?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, can you see my slides? Yes, okay. Something completely different, same time frame, two large projects happening. This is McDaniel, former Madison High School in Portland, and we had a great team. And one of the reasons I put this out, it was really integrated with PPS, all of our players there, as well as the administration. Internally, our own interior design group was also heavily involved in this giant project, close to 300,000 square feet. And we had a great client all the way through, both Ayanna Horn, who was our PPS project manager, and Adam Skiles, who was our principal, both very interested in design. And I think it showed through what we were able to achieve. We also, it sits in a very diversified neighborhood. And so we were trying to hit a highest level as we could of certified firms, which we did. I think the highest in the history of PPS. And really the school itself, we wanted that to represent what the school is, and this is their kind of population mix. And I should mention, Joe, we had Dow Architecture as our associate architect, and they were involved in every aspect of the project significantly through the project, and were instrumental, I think, in helping us connect with many of these groups. And that was really a key to this project, was getting out there and being where the students are, every technique through a number of both the master plan phase and the design phase, connecting with students, going out into the community within the different groups out in the community to where they meet normally, and working with them in their own space to talk about where do they see this building being a community resource. And then being out in the broader community, we talk about where the fun is, the Rosarians here, and many of the things that happen in the community along 82nd Street, where this is. We had some very strong project goals that came out of all of this workshops, both in the master plan phase and through the early design phase. And we're pretty excited that we were able to achieve those goals, I think on a very high level. A little bit about, many people know 82nd Street, State Highway now, I think, has just about become a city street, but history most on the edge of the city, but much more in the center of things today. A busy place, and many people did not know that at the time Madison High School actually existed and where it was. Just interestingly, that Missoula flood came down and created the Alameda Ridge that this sits on. So we had a really significant, I think, close to 60-foot drop across our building site from the fields up to the top. And so while in some ways it's a 2 or 3 story building, it's actually like a 6-story building, which added a lot of complexity to the space planning and organization of the building. And so what we really did is we took this building that had a lot of different pieces, and we really disassembled and took away all these areas of blue and created this new connecting tissue through the building, added these major areas that are in blue to the building in the circulation space, and filled in half of one of the existing courtyards and enclosed both courtyards because previously they had been open and completely unused. You can see here in this section the idea of how the building and that space connects through all of the levels. And this was one of the big goals, is to create connectivity through the building, through the levels, from the park, Glen Haven Park at the top, down to the fields, so that as you move through this building, you're always connected out to the outside, which was not the case with the building. In fact, many students did not even know there was a lower level or how to get to the gym from within the building itself, because they were just through dark stairways. So that process involved a lot of hands-on work with our very large 35-member citizens committee, students, teachers, parents, community members. We use models, physical models, all sorts of things to connect with people, to talk about what would these spaces be like, and particularly how we could create what was called the crossroads, and create a center and a place on this campus that did not exist in the past. And so this is kind of how that turned out. This is actually what you see on the right with the wood screen is actually the wall of the old building classroom wing. And on the left through the windows, you can see the other piece of an older piece of the building. And in the middle, we filled in this courtyard. So the idea of this central commons courtyard was really an inside version of the outside social space. At the very heart is the crossroads, which became this place where you could stand and actually see almost every aspect of over 300,000 square feet, or at least a direction to hit one of those areas. And it has in fact become that. The principal stands here at the center of this picture pretty much every day and sees those students passing and is able to really make those connections through seeing everybody that comes in. I think this is kind of what it looks like on a daily basis. And it really has been successful as something where students now have that sense of movement and connectivity through the building. It's really fun to actually see a building like that open and see everybody doing, I guess, what they're supposed to do, at least we think they're going to do. And so one of the issues that came up through this was how do we represent those different communities, really diverse communities? And so we met with different groups within the student leadership. They have leaders from each of their cultural groups and ethnic groups on campus that have organizations. And one interesting thing that came out of that is they were very interested, and this is working with Mayor Reed on the graphics, about creating graphics that didn't represent individual groups, but it represented common themes of change makers, themes of use of diversity and color and texture and pattern versus trying to call out specific groups within the campus. Another interesting aspect of the project is we, about 2 years after it opened, we had the pandemic during this project and as it opened. So really after a full year of use, we did a very large post-occupancy study, had over, I think, 150 respondents online to a very extensive survey. And there's a lot of information that came out of that. But one of the interesting aspects, a couple of those, one was the whole idea of the safe and inclusive space for all, which was one of their goals of the project. And part of that came to the all gender restrooms, and they actually came out very high. In fact, one of the interesting things out of that survey was they wondered why we had any gendered restrooms, because the all gendered restrooms had more privacy, and they didn't understand why we wouldn't just do that for every restroom. So that was kind of an interesting reveal of what we thought originally might be a concern, but wasn't. The big part of this project was to take the community partners, which in the past and in many schools are regulated to the outskirts of the building or to the basement or something else, and bring them right to the very center of that crossroads. So on the level above this is the library, the crossroads to the right, the community partners, the SUN programs, all the different programs that support these students, and an informal work area that spills those out, so that those programs, which are so important to student success, are right at the heart of the school rather than a secondary aspect of the learning environment. Another interesting aspect of this was how we dealt with CTE, another program which often is pushed to the outside, to the wing or somewhere on a building. And here the idea was to bring it right into the heart. So the crossroads there on the right, right off of that, there's a STEAM courtyard, and around that are the wood shops, the technology spaces, the art spaces, the theater spaces, and a series of flexible, you can see the garage doors. There are 4 of those that open into flex spaces, workspaces that all open into the courtyard. And if you go there, this space is actually one of the most fun. They're building small houses there. They're doing robotics in that courtyard. It's an enclosed, secure space. It's just a hive of activity, and it's immediately visible right into the main common space. So CTE is put, right on display, right there at the heart of the school. One of the interesting things as we were going through this project is we were asked to, preserve some pieces of the existing school. And this was the original end court of the gym that was demolished. And of course, they changed the name due to the history of James Madison. And so together with the school, we came up with the idea of actually applying the new name over the old name. It's a way to show that there is this history and the change happens and that there's a reason for that change. And I think that was an interesting way to deal with that issue. And of course, the building has a big presence. And so we tried to create some signature elements. What came out of the master plan is beacons, these places where you identify as major places. Here, the beacon to the gym and to the athletic facilities up on the hill, that to the science, what calls the science beacon. And also there was one to the main entry of the building itself. And we used color as part of this to bring some color and also contrast to the brick and do some simple volumes that create a bold expression, because the building is so big, it needs that scale to create a sense of entry in place. Lastly, the whole project had a big sustainability goal to it, and as all the projects in the district covered with PV panels, but also rainwater, all sorts of aspects through the building. We tried to push as much as we could. We actually ended up with getting a greenhouse incorporated into educational greenhouse and a food program that were not part of the original CTE program, but we're able to get in through some CTE grants late in the design phase. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And we are open to any questions.
Yes, thank you. Everyone who is interested in doing so can unmute and take themselves off of or on to put your camera on, I guess, if you want. And yeah, ask any questions.
Don't be shy. I'll start asking you guys questions.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you both. Both of those projects really kind of tickled my interest. I really appreciated the project in the Palouse. Kind of spoke to my Bauhaus fan within me, really putting that structure on display. I really enjoyed that. And then the restrooms, that really, this is gonna come out weird, but I'm always fascinated with bathrooms. I'm curious though, with that, you mentioned that there was the majority, like 75%, indicated that they enjoyed that particular layout. Right. Have you had any comment, or have you had any opportunity to do a project with an older generation, if you will, as far as an older generation using those kinds of facilities?
Well, it's interesting. So the building has a combination. Just in design at the same time was Grant High School, which had all gender restrooms. They did not have any gender restrooms, or at least not many. This community felt nervous about that and said, we want to mix. Well, we did put the all gender restroom, the largest single banks, right at the crossroads, which were also where the cafeteria and the library, and where most of, if adult community was going to come into the building, those would be the restrooms that they would use. We didn't survey in our online occupancy survey any users that were from outside of the building. We are doing some and have done some all gender restroom facilities in higher education, again, not older adults. So I can't say that we have that direct experience, but I think what we got out of it is once people see the privacy aspects of it, they quickly kind of get, oh, well, that's better. There still might be some issues in the grooming areas with the sinks and so on that some older folks might have issues with, but I can tell you the students, not at all. I mean, they're just, and they use it heavily. So at each gendered restroom, though, we did a block throughout, and there are 4 other main blocks in the campus, there were 2 all-gender individual restrooms. So anywhere you were, there were still all-gender restrooms available in those spaces. And those are heavily used as well, but since they're just single users, they limit the amount of use they can have. They've also had much less issues with security. Most of the issues in high school for security, vandalism, all those things that you don't want to happen in the restrooms, frankly. And they have had much less of that within the all-gender restroom, mainly because it's directly wide open to the hallways on 2 ends. So it's pretty obvious when you're in there. And in the mix of occupancy, I think changes the dynamics of what happens in those restrooms.
So the other issue that I'm interested in regarding that layout is the hygiene component of it. In not only in the users, because they're going into a stall, using the stall, and then coming out, and I guess it's the same as if you were using a partitioned stall as far as washing your hands before you leave the facility and go to the restroom. The next person is still going to be dealing with that same issue.
I mean,
so that's not so much
essentially the same. There's 2 different ways to do these. I know it's probably restrooms may not be the subject of everybody's interest, but it is a big subject. And the grant used individual hard wall tiled with doors for their individual stalls. We elected to go with a European style full height partition with 0 sight line and a very, very small gap at the floor, just enough for water to run through. And we did that somewhat from an aesthetic viewpoint, but also from a practical viewpoint. We believe that might allow an ability to not have all of these doors and door frames and all the things that happen in a small individual room in terms of cleaning. And we also, in this case, it was by the CMDC determined to be a cheaper way to go with the partitions, and certainly took up less space than creating hard walls that were tiled. But yeah, they've been really successful. And,
yeah, the other part of that hygiene component was the question about janitorial, as far as how do they feel? How does the janitorial staff feel about maintaining those?
It's been positive. We had some issues with door locks, but it's just like any partition system, toilet partitions. There were some issues there, but no, they've been really good. And again, the fact that there are as high visibility, there seems to be less things like trash on the floor. There's just the visibility. If you walk by them, it's probably a 10 or 15 foot wide opening off the hallway. So sound is an issue. We tried to work on that. I think there are a few places that we might not have gotten it right. You want to put those openings away from places where you're going to hear flushing sounds and all those other things. Although the full height partitions really help quite a bit on that, surprisingly.
No, it's cool. It's awesome to see it implemented. Well done.
Thank you.
No other questions? That was an amazing project.
Any good questions on mass timber? Because Chris is it's a volume of information.
Looks like Nancy had a question. Oh, we
Oh,
can't hear you,
We
Nancy.
can't hear you, Nancy. Still no sound.
You could type it into the chat if you want.
She's connecting now.
Okay.
Thanks so much. I really love these buildings. They're so exciting. It's really inspiring to see them. I've seen the Idaho building, a long time ago, because it just made such a big splash, and it's really amazing to see how it got put together. So thank you so much for all the efforts of your team, Chris and Alex. And then to see this school is also very satisfying. I think it's extremely attractive both on the outside, and it's so satisfying to see how the interiors really carry through this vision. So I just want to express my appreciation. Maybe my question might be about the Idaho project about how the exterior wood is holding up? And did you do something special to make sure it won't look terrible in the little file?
No, it's an excellent question, and so far so good. It's actually performing great. You know, and it really gets to, I think there's a couple of things we have in our favor there. We've got massive overhangs. We've got some really large over. I mean, it gets pretty severe weather as far as cold and snow. They don't get a they definitely get the rain, but not like we get here. And so some of those things kind of play in our favor. Also, they don't have much wood. A couple things. One is you saw like the dark stain. So we're going to try the dark stain. We did, and that was full. That was where each slat was fully immersed. And so I think a big part was getting the right, you know, I'll sing I'll sing the praises of Sanson all day long. I think their products are amazing as far as their wood protection capabilities. And so sealed and stained with the Sanson, the clear sealers that we used on both the cedar and the glue lamps was Sanson sealer. There, and I think the SDF was the finish coat on that. So it was a combination of KP12 and the SDF, and I think that has provided a real a robust protection. We did have very upfront conversations with the university about maintenance. We were, you know, at a maximum saying, you know, 5 years from now, and we're 2.5, we're almost halfway there, believe it or not. You know, there's going to be resealing that you're going to need to account for in your general maintenance budgets for the project. And so we didn't, because it's wood, it's natural, it is going to age. But I will say I've been surprisingly happy in my return trips back to there as recently as about 2 months ago, holding up extremely well, not showing any kind of wear and tear. I would say it's actually performing better than I thought it would. So again, I think it's really a testament to both the products and how well it's put on. You know, this isn't just someone out there brushing it on after it's up. These were really treated well before they even arrived on the site.
That's so great. Thanks so much for sharing these amazing projects. Alex, I just wanted you to know that I live pretty close to the Jefferson Middle School Arts and Technology Academy, and I just love the way, you know, it's perked up the neighborhood. It's just really a great facility.
Well, you've got to see those. I think we're going to do a tour for those that are involved in A4LE of the new North Eugene High School, which will be opening in the fall. And I think it's a spectacular building. The interior's just got some amazing spaces. And for me, I think what we're seeing is, you know, particularly in Oregon and with the PPS program and Eugene, with some opening for architecture to influence these school spaces to make them really beautiful with really great materials and an ability to do some interesting spaces that really students, you know, they see it. It's not just a box, you know, it's something different. And one of the things I didn't mention is that our principal that was involved in McDaniel has said that every space, all these informal learning spaces, which were quite controversial to teachers, like who's going to use those, going to be issues, students are going to be doing bad things, all the negatives that come out in those conversations. Too much glass to the street, it isn't going to be safe. Every one of these issues has turned into a complete positive. He says students are doing projects together that they never would have done before, because the only place was to sit on the floor with their backs against the lockers and their butts on the you know, the VCT floor. And he said they are using and creating a whole different environment in that McDaniel School that never happened. And he spent 10 years in, or maybe even longer, maybe close to 15 years in the old building, was involved all the way through the design as vice principal, but in charge of the project for us, and then became the principal when the building is done. So he knows the difference of how much design can, and frankly, he told us a number of times that he didn't know that he was so interested in what we talked about through the process, but until he actually saw it in use, he wasn't even sure, is that really going to happen? Are people really going to use it? Are they going to know the difference? Are they going to feel the respect? And they certainly have. And he's told us that a number of times that, you know, for someone who doesn't come from a design background, he's like a total convert, that design does make a difference. So he's been wonderful for us to connect with, and was a big part of us doing the survey, the post-occupancy survey.
So exciting. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Any other questions for our crew? We're approaching time.
Regarding the Palouse roof, I noticed that there are some visible steel web parts that come from the glue lams, but I can't see any, you know, tension cord at the bottom. But there must be something there. Can
Yeah.
you explain?
Yeah, so
What those look like?
it's so each individual truss is made up of two top cords. So there's two glue lam top cords, and then we've got these two triangulated king posts that come down on each side, and then there is a tension rod. There's actually two tension rods on each end that come to the apex of those triangulated king post trusses, and a single rod that goes across horizontally. They're then embedded or pulled back into the landing spots at the end of the truss. So we've got the curved truss on the top. You've got the bottom cord, or the cables in tension are coming in from the end and then flat across the middle. So flat across the middle, and then they connect up to where they're connected with the beams on one side. It's that big portal truss that it's connected to, and on the other side, it's more of a typical post and beam system that's kind of buried in the wall. So all the tension and all the compressions in each one of those individual 12 trusses that are laid across there.
Yeah, in the photographs, it's hard to see. It looks like magic almost.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's big. No, you're absolutely right. It shows you kind of the scale of the space, because like in reality, you know, it's a big, like, I think 1.5 inches, you know, solid steel rod that's in tension there. But because of just you know, the overall spans, we're going about 150 feet in each direction there, and so scale wise, when you're in the space, it's very minimal in terms of the perception of the steel. It's just kind of a secondary piece, but it's kind of a very vital piece because it allows us to make those large spans by utilizing that methodology. It also allowed us to really, StructureCraft really dialed in the depth of the wood members. They did multiple studies where just looking at the optimizing that, you know, it looks like a subtle curve, and it is, but they really dialed in just the overall geometries to minimize the depth of those glue lam pieces, which I'll just try to make a story short. They're donated by Boise Cascade, and Boise had certain parameters of what they could produce in the timeline that we needed. And so we went through this whole optimization exercise with them, StructureCraft did with us and Boise Cascade, to bring those sizes down so they could put them on basically regularize them, so they didn't have to make as many press changes on the shapes. So they tried to regularize the shapes so we had more of the same, and then also the amount of actual raw stock or lamb stock that was going into those, try to minimize the amount of timber that was going to, so try to be as efficient as possible.
And you know, Chris, one interesting thing, it's hard to tell in photos, but these are curved trusses in the east-west direction, but the whole roof is curved also in the north-south direction. So it's a double curve. It's a parabolic. It's basically a very flat dome. And so each truss of the 12 trusses is different. It has a different shape. None of this would be possible, you know, not that many years ago, without not only the sort of the computer modeling, but someone like StructureCraft who's able to do all that in their shop in Vancouver. All these were totally pre-assembled and then disassembled and shipped to the site, like shrink wrapped, and then reassembled on the site. So each of those pieces was very accurate. When you said they went in this giant portal truss went in with like, I don't know, 1/2 inch clearance or something, and the thing is absolutely massive. The beams are 6 feet deep, and they're doubles and the whole thing. I mean, it's enormous, and the precision that it went back together, because they'd all been assembled in their floor, in their shop in Canada, and then taken apart and brought back. It was pretty amazing how that was possible, and I don't think it'd be possible not that long ago.
I'll add this to that conversation because it also applies to Nancy's earlier comment just about how's the wood holding up. Is we were really targeted in the assembly. We were able to do all this. Basically, that entire roof structure went in between May and August. So we went from having basically nothing there, and then 3 months had a completed roof structure, fully roofed in the dry months, and a real testament to, you know, all I think the legwork, computer modeling, and then just the skilled craftsmanship of those components as they just fit into place as they went in.
Well, it is just after 6 o'clock, and I will encourage you guys to reach out to Chris and Alec for any further questions, but I'll also say this has generated some good topics for more continuing education for us. So we appreciate the time and certainly appreciate your education in the projects, and thank everybody for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.